All right, so the first thing we're going to look at is the hinge, just to explain a little bit more detail what that should look like. So again, you're measuring the hip line, and you want to go down. Let me change the color. You want to go down and forward at the same time. So if you meet those two angles, you're going to go diagonally. All right. So if you were to take your belly button or your belt buckle, if you're wearing one, that would be the thing we're measuring or watching as you go through space. All right, so you do go down and forward. All right, because once we go into what's the first point of rotation, roughly right there, or the bottom of the hinge, right there. Okay, so you did go down and you did go forward. All right, so that's where those two meet. So your hinge is, it looks right, but the thing that I think is causing it's just not as efficient as possible is so you want that turn. You can see how your knee is here, and then the knee is going to basically keep going up and go back towards your belly button, and then your hip goes towards the plate. All right, that's good. The thing that I think is not as efficient as it could be is right this point forward. All right, so you drop down into this leg, but I think this leg is not in the correct spot because now you go directly forward. All right, so your hips will stay on that line. All right, so if we were to go back to the top of the knee lift, all right, let's mark your head. All right, you're gonna go pretty much straight down. You go a little bit forward, but you almost go straight down and then straight forward. All right, so your head movement is like this, where you want it to be more from here and then here and then there. You want it to be that way so that you then, once you get to that point, you can rotate, and basically you'll be moving down into the ground to corkscrew yourself into the ground instead of basically you're moving as you go to throw the ball, you're only moving this way, and you want to be moving. That's why your front foot, I mean, you rotate well. Like, and this is where this stuff, it's the minor details that are really what give you the jump, or what give you the most benefit, the jump and velo and all that stuff. All right. So I don't think this back leg is in the right spot. Again, you said if this knee is pointed back, that helps you or it feels better. And I think we either have to find a cue that gets you in that back hip better or just have to work on it. I think one of the reasons that it's not ideal right now is because your head is a little far back. Let me get a straight line in there. All right, it's close to your knee. If we were to look at, let's see who else we got. You want to sit? No. Do I have a side view of gray? Let's see what we got here. All right. So clear again. And again, sometimes these are skewed a little bit because of the angle. It's not the exact same angle. So if I were to draw a straight line down from his temple and down from your temple, you're really not that far off, but the thing that you're going to look at is the angle of his back leg. All right. His is projected forward a lot more. So if I were to measure, if we were to look at this angle right here between the two, his is going to be greater, which means he's moving towards the plate more as he's going down the mound, which allows him to stay in the quote-unquote back hip longer. All right, so the flexion of the back hip, like, you have it, you're good there. Basically, you're measuring if there was an arm here and an arm on your thigh. If we were looking this way, I'm gonna draw. This is your torso, that's your thigh, and then that's your knee, that's your foot, and then I'll draw your arm in red. Your arm is going to be back here somewhere. It's a terrible arm, but you get the idea. So right here is torso flexion or hip flexion. And as you go forward into rotating or into rotation, that, draw that angle again, torso and femur. As you go into rotation, the torso is going to move over here. It's going to move this way. So then this angle right here is going to open up. But the kicker is not doing it like you're jumping. You have to take your pelvis and rotate it, and that hip gets pulled into extension. I'll try to show you on sunny gray down here. All right, so right now you can see how this hip is extended. All right, but if we can go back, and again, these are fine details. So he's in hip flexion. You can see how his torso is roughly like that, and then his legs are still bent. This angle is still apparent. It's not straight yet. So as you go forward, as he starts to rotate, we're going to see how far he goes in this direction with his belt buckle, and how much he rotates. Okay. So the momentum of him going down the mound takes him forward. It's impossible to completely stop. But the feeling and the ideal is that you almost stop your forward momentum and then rotate as fast as you can. But then those two meet and marry together, and that's where the torque comes from. But you can see how, let's see what his head does. All right, his ear will go from there. Let's go to go on the chest as well with 3 points. All right, so then belt buckle, L, ear. All right, yes, they move forward, but they didn't. Let's look on you. So when does that hip get extended? Right there, it looks like. So if we were to do here, here, and here, let's see how far you can see how far you project forward to get that stretch. All right, so you almost kind of shoot your chest towards the plate, as opposed to rotating the hips and then check on Sonny Gray. That's where his chest projects. So your chest is projecting way too early, and it comes from whenever you go to rotate, whenever you need to rotate the hips, you're almost kind of jumping them forward and not rotating them as efficiently as you can. All right. So, and that's where you'll see here, you complete snap forward, and you would want, clear all this. As he comes through, where are we at? Let's match these up. Right there. Frame rates are different again. You can see how the body is turned more. His body and head are faced that way. Yours are facing at the catcher as you're releasing the ball and turning over. And he's turned more. All right. So your rotation just isn't as efficient as it could be. To paint the picture the best I can with the moving from the middle or moving from the torso. Okay, he doesn't pay attention to the bottom one. And this is the hard part about it all. Like, I'm keying in on his belt buckle, and his arms are moving the whole time, but his belt buckle doesn't really move. And after this point, it'll start to rotate. All right. You can see it starting to rotate. Clear it. But another thing you can see, let's go glove arm. Pay attention to the glove. As his pelvis is rotating, the glove almost stays in that same relative position. So that's where they talk about moving from the middle or moving from the torso. It's an incredibly difficult move because you have momentum going forward. You got a ball in your hand that you're trying to throw. So activating the pelvis as you're doing that it's not the common thing to do, and that's why it's very complex and hard to do. But that's why we can produce high velocities if we do it right. So again, it's really how long can you keep an angle right there, and then once you decide to open that angle up, it comes from rotating, and that's from moving your hip left. So does he go? So he's going to go around the corner basically. He's going to keep going forward, but that hip is moving left so that the right hip can open at extension. All right, and this is where you can see the big difference in big leaguers and amateurs is, look how relaxed his upper body is, but his hips are pretty much freely open. Like they're on this angle, and his shoulders are on this angle. So if I were to draw it, that's hips, that's shoulders. With you, we got hips and we got shoulders. So again, this angle is the hip shoulder separation, and that's why they produce more velo. It's the ability to, as I'm going down the mound, take my pelvis and rotate it. And like I said, it's complex and it's not natural, but that's the steps of it. You mentioned moving from the middle, moving from the torso. The pelvis, it basically has to be under complete control. Otherwise, the shoulders and the knees and everything have to take over. And then it becomes harder to rotate. So it's really, I mean, you can probably find you'd have to search for a cue for it, but it's really about a feeling. It's as I'm going down the mountain, how can I basically contract the muscles around my pelvis to start rotating as I go into foot strike. So we can do, there's that's kind of the focus, or that's the purpose of the med balls and all the rotation stuff. But because you're not throwing a ball, the separation is a little less. And well, I guess you're throwing a med ball, but you're not throwing it with one arm, you're throwing it with two. So it's easier to create that separation because your left arm is back behind you. When you're throwing, your left arm is in front of you. So it's harder to keep the shoulder closed and fire the hips open. So when you come again, we'll work more on rotation. I got a few little exercises that work on the motor control and stuff of it, and we can hopefully get the feeling there for you to recognize, and then you can search for that while you're throwing. But it is definitely a complex thing, and it's not. It'll never come from just strictly strength. It's fine motor control. As I'm sprinting or flying through the air, can I contract the correct muscles that need to be contracted? And typically, no, because your body just will do whatever it needs to do to control itself, not produce power if it's in momentum. And moving down the mound, you're in momentum. So if you can, if again, I mean, it's really, it's a complex thing to do, and it's even more of a complex thing to kind of explain, and it's all about feel. It really is. And like, to be able to actively feel your hip separating from your shoulder, your hip line separating from your shoulder line, is not an everyday thing. Another detail about it about the pitch and delivery that's really complex is you can see this hip on Sonny Gray is in extension, but then we go to the left hip and it's in flexion, very deep angle of flexion. So you have one pelvis, but each side needs to be different as you're throwing. So that's another thing that is just, it's not normal. So really focusing on pelvis rotation is our next step, and being able to ride. I don't think you're in a bad position anywhere. I think your knee can stay back a little bit longer, but then being able to activate the hips or the pelvis into foot strike is the next thing we have to figure out. So I hope this helps, and we'll keep working on it.